Okay, this is weird because I'm talking to an empty room. Um, I was hoping to be able to help people understand better the process and reasons for the revaluation, how it's tied to the tax rate, um, what it means in general for people's individual tax burdens, and what the equalization ratio is. I have a couple emails that I would like to answer if I can pull them up. Um, okay, this email is about a letter from the assessor's office that seems to be in opposition to what the information on the website from the reappraisal company, KRT, is. I would suggest just emailing your question because it's kind of specific to something I don't know a ton about, to our town assessor, which is assessing at brentwoodnh.gov. Her name's Adrienne. She's very nice. She comes in on Mondays. She'll be able to answer specifically how the answer to your question about what sales dates were used to do that calculation. I know that there's been questions about the online GIS portal on the website not necessarily being updated. That is because that is based on the old system. We're working on a new system now, and we are going to wait until the revaluation is completely done and finalized before we update that system because it costs a lot of money every time we update it. So we want to make sure that we only have to do it once for right now, instead of having to do it now and then again when they're finalized. Let's see. Okay. This email is asking about the steps and deadlines for the assessment process. If you go to KRT's website, specifically the section for Brentwood, it outlines kind of a 1 through 6 step process of a general timeline of what they do and what the steps are. Right now, for anyone that goes there, we are just finishing up with phase 5, which is those informal hearings, before they go out to do phase 6, which is a full measure and list, where they're going to go out to every property. And I'll just read. It says, data collectors note the building's location, size, age, quality of construction, improvements, topography, utilities, and numerous other characteristics inside and out. So that is still to come. I know a lot of people have had concerns that they weren't correctly assessed based on what their own property has. There are a couple different ways you can handle that. You can come in to the town offices and ask to have your property card printed, which is almost like your property's record of what's there, how much of it there is, how big it is, et cetera, and that's what's used to do these calculations. So you can check to see if it's correct or not. Or when they come out to do the full measure and list, you'll be able to correct things then. What else? Okay. This person said that it would be great if the procedures and dates were publicized on the town websites ahead of time. Yes, I would agree with that, and we will definitely keep that in mind for next time. This process happens currently every 5 years. We could do it more frequently, but we're required by law to do at least every 5 years. Yep. The select board always welcomes feedback about any contractor that we decide to hire to work with the town and the residents. Good, bad, or otherwise. If you had a great experience, if you had a not so great experience, if it was okay, the board needs to know, because it will impact the decision to use that contractor or not in the future, or maybe have other specifications on what we request them to do. Yeah, you just have to let the board know, because they're the ones that end up hiring these people. Okay, this question is about how the equalization ratio factors into property taxes and or the tax rate. It says, assume we have a residence with a recent valuation of $500,000. The hypothetical tax rate is $25 per thousand. The hypothetical equalization ratio is 50%. So the equalization ratio actually doesn't have anything to do with the tax rate. What the equalization ratio is intended to show, and that's a number that the town doesn't set at all, that's set by the state. It's intended to show how far off our values are compared to the market values. So if we had an equalization ratio of 50%, then the state is basically saying, we think that your houses are undervalued by 50%. If the number is 110%, then that's the state saying, we think your houses are currently overvalued by about 10%. Anything, I'm trying to remember what Adrian said. I think anything from, I don't know, 80 to 85 to 100 is kind of the goal. The further away you get from 100, meaning you're spot on, your houses are valued right at what market value is, if you were to try to sell them today, that's the goal, is 100, to be right on. Once you get lower than 85 or 80, you're kind of far from the mark, and then you'll have a situation like we have now, where people's values went up by a lot since the last equalization. Some towns do it every year, so that they're always staying closer to what the actual value is, but it costs money. And so the town currently does it every 5 years. So in summary, the equalization ratio does not play a factor into your tax rate at all. Let's see, do I have any others? Yes. I think that's it for now. I'll still be here because I don't really have anything else to do. I'm going to turn off the microphone and just hang out and keep an eye on my email. If anyone has any other questions, let me know, or send them in as an email, and I will try to answer them if I can. I guess the only other thing that I could explain generally is just that the operating budget was voted on by the taxpayers in March, and that number has not changed. So if the value of the properties in town has gone up, the tax rate will come down to accommodate that, because we don't collect extra money just because the value of your house has gone up. We don't know what that tax rate is going to be yet. That tax rate is typically set, I think, to the middle of end of October, if I remember correctly. We have to wait for the state to kind of finalize what our revenues were, what money was left over from last year's appropriation, just to kind of finalize what the number that the town needs to collect is. And then by that time, we'll also have a more finalized number for the town revaluations, which will mean that that same number that we approved in March will just be divided by a bigger total number with the higher valuation, which would mean that the tax rate will go down. I do not know how much it will go down by. I cannot tell you what the number is. The rule of thumb that KRT suggests using, and this again is just a general guideline, which is that if you take the total amount that the valuation has changed, so on their website they talk about how, based on the current state of the market, it would be reasonable to expect the town's valuation percentage to increase by 60%. A general rule of thumb that you can use is that if your personal household valuation increased by less than 60%, so let's say it went up by 55%, that you will probably pay less in total taxes than you currently do. If your increase is about the same as the overall average, so about 60%, yours is going to stay probably about the same. The amount of money that you pay in taxes will probably stay about the same. If your number is higher, so let's say 65 or 70%, then you will likely pay more in taxes. There are a couple of reasons why people's valuations go up by more than the average. The most common one is that you've done work to your house. You added a garage, you finished a basement, something like that that added actual value to your property, not just changed what features within your property were worth. And again, if you have questions about how your property specifically was valued, or what the features were used or calculations that they used for that, emailing the assessor and getting a copy of your tax, your property card that lists all those things, that lists how much unfinished basement you have, it lists how big your garage is, it lists how big your deck is, it lists all of the things that go into your valuation. And ensuring that all of those things are accurate for your property is the best first step to making sure that your valuation is accurate. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it for now. But I will keep an eye on my email while I'm here working until I shut this off, and then that's it. want to know?
No, I'm just here to learn the process that took place.
Sure. So
if you want to wait, I mean, 2 minutes.
I can stay here for as long as I want.
I know you can, but we're supposed to start at 5, so I'm just.
So I think the thing that has caused the most confusion, and I think that's kind of why I personally wanted to give people an opportunity to ask questions, is understanding that if your valuation changes, it does not mean that your tax bill is going to change in the same way. Meaning the amount you pay is not necessarily going to change in the same way. Meaning, if your valuation goes up by 50%, that does not mean that the amount you pay in taxes is going to go up by 50%. It doesn't mean that the amount you pay is going to go down by 50% either. It's just not tied together in that way. Not for each individual property. So the way that the tax rate is set, and this usually happens middle to end of October, is the state, the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, tells the town, this is how much you had left over from last year, this is how much you had in revenue, this is how much, all of these things are. And one of those components is this is how much your valuation is, meaning how much all the properties in town are worth. So you take how much was appropriated at town meeting, subtract out the revenue, subtract out this, subtract out that, divide by that total number, and that's your tax rate. So the amount that people approved in March is not going to change. They approved it in March. But the number that we're dividing it by has gone up by quite a bit, which means the rate's going to go down by quite a bit. I don't know how much it's going to go down because we haven't done it yet. The rule of thumb that KRT has been suggesting and that the assessor is suggesting that has been suggested for people to kind of have a sense of what their personal tax bill will do is if your property valuation went up by more than the average. So if you total all of the properties in town, if the average was, I'm making a number up because it's not done yet, 60%, okay? Let's say it went up by 60%. If your individual property went up by 55%, because that's lower than 60, you're gonna pay less in tax dollars than you did before. If your property went up by about 60, it's gonna be about the same number of dollars. If it went up by more than that, it's gonna be more dollars, probably, because the tax rate hasn't been set yet. Reasons that people's individual property will go up by more than that average could be you built a garage, you finished your base, you did something to your property that increased the value aside from just a market calculation.
So how did you folks come up with that reassessment?
So the town doesn't do it. The town contracts with an assessment company, which is KRT. They were picked. We did a public RFP asking for companies to submit proposals for how much it was going to cost and what the services they were going to do. I think KRT was the only one that responded, but they were selected. They do on their website. You can go to krtappraisal.com/dist/Brentwood, and you can get the preliminary assessed values by owner, location. And then they also give you a list of sales that they used to come up with those rates.
So sometimes when assessors come by, they walk around the property and look at it.
That is going to happen next. So the other thing that's on this page.
This company.
Yes.
Only got a number by a few major things like you said, a garage or something, and property sales.
Yes, because their assumption is that everyone's property cards, I don't know if you know what a property card is, it's a document that the town has on every property in town, and it has a little kind of sketch of what the outline of the building is. It details this part's a basement, this part, So assuming those are all correct, then they don't need to look, right? Because if your house hasn't changed materially in what's in it, or, what features the property has or anything like that, then it's just looking at those market values, right? Yes, right? But that's what the market, is your house the same size as the house next to you? Well, then you don't have to worry about it. Because in theory, assuming that all these property cards are accurate, their property card is different than yours. Sure. Sure. I don't know what it was before, but rough numbers wise, would you be in the above 60% or lower than 60% category? So that means your tax bill will probably go down, meaning the amount that you will pay annually in taxes will likely go down. Because the rate will go down because the overall valuation has gone up. We don't know what that new rate is, but it will go down. But like I was saying, so on their website, they have a list of kind of the phases and the steps. Phase 1, sales data collection. They collected information about homes that sold within a certain interval in town. And then they review that and validate it, and then they do a market analysis, and then they do field review, which is they go back out and check them again, and then they do these hearings after they send the letters out. And then phase 6, which is the one that's coming up, is a full measure and list of every property in town. What that means is they will go to every property in town and make sure that those sketches are accurate. Make sure that you have the number of bedrooms and bathrooms we think you do. Stuff like that. Like I guess somebody earlier was saying, well, I heard that somebody said they had 4 bathrooms and they only have 1. That's exactly the kind of thing that they're going to find. They can ask to, but I don't believe you have to let them. They can obviously measure the outside of your house without going in, so they'll at least get the floor plan. It says data collectors note the building's location, size, age, quality of construction, improvements, topography, utilities, and numerous other characteristics. So that, again, is them just trying to make sure that that property card for your property is accurate. Yes, it's going to be marked. I think we're going to send postcards out ahead of time being like, hey, these people are coming. They're going to have a letter from the town saying that they're supposed to be here. They might even have IDs that the town gives them. I'm not sure if they'll be in a vehicle that's marked Town of Brentwood or not. That can be something we figure out when that comes. But the intent is to let people know. Yes. Yes. KRT assessing. Yeah, but like I said, they'll have letters saying, I'm so-and-so with KRT, and here's my letter from the town saying I'm here to do this thing. And I think that's, yes. What else?
That was it. It was really how you came up with the new evaluation.
Yes. So the analogy that I've been finding to be helpful for people is if you imagine that the list of features in your house are almost like ordering something off of a menu, right? Like I have this many square feet of basement and this many square feet of attic and this many square feet of first floor and whatever else and garage. The process that they did where they looked at sales in town and figured out, okay, it looks like in Brentwood, people want to buy about this much a square foot, right? Like this is the cost. That is kind of like the menu, right? So the things that you order haven't changed, but the prices on the menu have. And that's where the revaluation comes in. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now that next part where they come out is making sure that you ordered the things that are really what your house is. Now, it's starting pretty soon. That's next. Yes. I don't know. So some of them have already been done. So as part of the first couple steps, they already went out to houses that sold in the last 2 years, maybe the last year. So that's quite a few. hopefully, they're all pretty accurate. That's right. That's the goal. We want everyone to have accurate property cards. Hopefully, as people have gotten building permits, their property cards have been updated and whatnot. But that's not always the case, and that's where we will catch those on the it's called a full measuring list when they go out to the properties. And if you want, you can stop in Jillian's office and ask. She can print you a copy of your property card if you're curious what yours says. Okay.
So thank you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
Yep, because everybody was up in arms.
they were, but they did not show up.
No.
But that's okay.